Remember those 50 intelligence officers or former intelligence officials who came forward stating that the laptop story was disinformation? Much like Pepperidge Farms, I remember. We're now separated from that story by at least a couple of years now, and yet all of the misinformation around it still remains intact. What's worse is that we're actually bombarded by misinformation by the mainstream media, and they're never held accountable for it. The technocracy itself is actually aligned to support the false narratives, much like they did during the global crisis, in collusion with governments around the world. What is the media's responsibility here? And what can we do about it? Well, we really need to talk about it, so here we go. Media gets it wrong a lot. Many apologists say it's because of the rush to be first when reporting breaking news. And while this may have a hint of truth to it, or it may have been an issue long ago at the foundation of that 24-hour news cycle, it's really not the driving issue here. The primary reason why they are so terribly wrong so often is that they have to craft a narrative around any of these stories that they're going to bring to you and I. It has to support a particular political agenda, and we no longer have a fleet of credible journalists that are actually digging into any of these stories. We have advocates, we have activists, and they don't actually report on the actual news or facts. Fox recently reported, in fact, probably the article you're looking at right now on the screen, their essentially annual story of all the things the media has admitted that it's gotten wrong recently in the last few years. So we're going to start out where the article starts out here. We're going to start out with Eric Wemple. Now, Eric came out and admitted that he was afraid to combat the leftist media narrative in 2020 around the Times publishing of Tom Cotton's op-ed on using military force to quell the violence that was in U.S. cities, driven by, you guessed it, one of the favorite groups of the leftist media. And he called the response that forced out James Bennett, I should say, the editor that was there, in social media, very manipulative and performative. Well, I think we would all agree. He used as an exemplar the fact that not one of the 30 Times staffers that he recently approached about the matter would actually provide an on-the-record defense of the central argument. Because, hey, how can you? In fact, in something very uncharacteristic, at least in the excerpt that was provided by Fox, Wemple actually expressed regret, stating, and I quote, "Although the hollowness of the internal uproar against Bennett was immediately apparent, we responded with an even-handed critique of the Times flip-flop, not the unapologetic defense of journalism that the situation required. Our posture was one of cowardice and mid-career risk management. With that, we pile on one more regret onto a controversy that was absolutely littered with them." And that's what Wemple said in that quote. Of course, that's a little too little and a lot too late when it comes to this conclusion. It sort of reeks of the stench of the please forgive us pandemic amnesty crowd that have just started begging without providing their mea culpas. So what happens to Bennett, who was forced to resign? What apologies have been made to Tom Cotton? Well, nothing substantive so far. Next, we come up on the ongoing narrative crutch of the Russian disinformation. And of course, this little chestnut has been coming up since the bologna sausage Hillary Clinton planted story about Trump. And of course, that grants opportunity to spy on the candidate and then president. But I digress, because it's bigger than that. So we're just going to focus on the laptop. And just under a month before an election, the New York Post delivered a bombshell that provided email proof of influence peddling. Mainstream media outlets and big tech worked tirelessly together to suppress the story, and even colluded with the US government and their alphabet agencies to keep it off of the radar. In fact, we now even have the name of the FBI official that briefed Facebook and other social media platforms, and that person continues to influence social media companies and manipulate what you see each day still. And again, thanks to the work of Missouri and Louisiana attorneys general, we know it was Laura Demlow of CISA. The specific briefing in regards to the laptop was attended by senior execs of Twitter, Facebook, JP Morgan Chase for some reason, the University of Washington, because I guess they're known for what exactly? The Illinois Emergency Management Services? What? And of course the DHS, because they seem to be at the center of some really controversial stuff right now. And according to the leaked notes, Demlow and Special Agent Elvis Chan, who has a very interesting history indeed, were involved in the direct communications with Meta that led to the Hunter Biden laptop story and its suppression. Well, the suppression of the story is probably a better way to phrase that, but all the mainstream media outlets ran with misinformation, and at least ran with the allegation of misinformation, and of course tying it to Russia, because why not? I mean, they're always the bad guys. So this included PMSNBC, CNN, print media, local media outlets, and they were all working in concert to get out a huge lie that influenced an election. And we know that for sure. This even resulted in the New York Post having their Twitter account suspended because they were sharing out the story. And of course, Facebook, Twitter, and many other media outlets, well, social media outlets, I should say, wouldn't even allow you to share the story. That's how much censorship there was around it. And reading here from the article, and again, you can read it for yourself, and I quote, MSNBC contributor Jason Johnson said it was so obviously a Russian operation. And CNN's Brian Stelter, who I guess is, some kind of an expert at something, not quite sure what, hypothesized that the emails could be made up. And the story was simply the right-wing media machine in action. Worse yet, 60 Minutes host Leslie Stahl told Trump in 2020 that the laptop couldn't be verified. And NPR announced it wouldn't waste our time on stories that are not really stories. Of course, Politico ran the story, citing the dozens of intel officers, many of them, of course, Biden supporters, that the laptop was a Russian influence operation. Oh, and let's not forget about those 50-plus intelligence officers, because they're kind of central to this entire video. And that they signed a public statement that was essentially taken word for word by Politico. In fact, you can still find that statement today over on the Politico website. It's in PDF form. You can download it, look it over, and see all the names of all of the people that, well, essentially, influenced an election. It's an interesting read, to say the least, and it kind of shines a light on just how corrupt our intelligence mechanisms may be. By casting doubt on something that actually, I guess, was quite easily verified, at least authenticated as belonging to Hunter Biden, at least as far as the laptop goes, and mind you, there's more than one, these intelligence officials actually worked in concert with the authoritative media, which is a subject matter that really frustrates me. Well, a descriptive, I should say, that really frustrates me, and basically influenced the election, as I suggested, to quite the extreme degree. And why do I say that? It's not without evidence, folks, because in polling released after the laptop was allowed to be a story, finally, 44% of likely voters stated just in September this year that it was very important. And the month before that, in similar polling, 79% believed that truthful reporting would have changed the election results. That's huge. Those are hefty numbers, my friends. And to think that the former intelligence officials didn't know what they were doing would be, well, I guess, quite naive. We absolutely know we know they knew what they were doing, at least. And let's not forget that it took 17 months before the New York Times would actually report that the laptop was real, a fact that was well known prior to the election and was essentially censored. The media knows that it's absolutely in a ton of trouble right now. No one believes the mainstream media anymore. And again, institutional trust in media has been falling like a rock for a long period of time. It's at an all-time low. Even in the year previous, in 2021, 58% of respondents think that most news organizations are more concerned about supporting an ideology or political position than they are about informing the public. You don't have to take my word for it. You can check the numbers over at Gallup. You can go to Edelman. These numbers are actually quite disturbing. And believe me, I review them quarterly. I look at them all the time. It's important to me. What's more is the article from Fox actually quotes Meghan McArdle as writing, "We are not trusted because we're not entirely trustworthy. That is not the only thing that will have to be fixed to heal our epistemic divide, but it would make a very good start." And again, she's from the corrupt media outlet, The Washington Post. Moving on to our next piece of heavily censored content, and again, these are seemingly endless, believe me. Of course, there's a story around the unknown origin bologna sausage that we have been forced to say here on many of these platforms for 2 years now, despite the ever-growing pile of evidence that, kind of breaks down exactly what actually happened. And both WAPO and the New York Times ran with the attacks on Senator Tom Cotton, once again speaking to the exact likelihood of the origin and reason. Well, here we are. It took until 2021 for the Biden administration themselves to acknowledge the validity of what we knew from the very beginning and was obviously talked about by Tom Cotton and many other people. And then WAPO was forced to eat crow and publish a correction. Boy, it would be nice if they did that with everything they got wrong, although I think half of their column inches would be filled with apologies. And from there, we already touched on the collusion bologna sausage cooked up by the Clinton campaign. I did that just a few moments ago, and that didn't help put a positive light on the media, as the planted garbage was nothing but advocacy journalism in service of a political campaign. Now, don't get me started on the exposure of the secret warrants and et cetera, all the stuff that was, done to spy on people. But after all that trash story was revealed, the New York Times and the Washington Post called it out for what it was, a political hit piece. Wemple himself actually went as far as to call out the PMSNBC anchor Rachel Maddow for granting it any kind of credibility. Actually, I went looking, by the way. I went looking for a retraction or an admission of fault by Maddow herself. I found nothing. If any of you can find anything that she said that's somewhat apologetic, please send it to me, because I'd like to add it to my media clippings folder for every time the authoritative media gets stuff 100% wrong. And speaking of which, the Covington kids. Now, that's going to be next up on the advocacy journalisming spotlight, because it needs to be. This was wrong from the word go because of an edited scrap of video, a piece of video that was actually intended to be misleading from the very beginning. It helped expose the selective editing process to the normies, which was kind of helpful. It showed off that these outlets and Antifa are in the habit of only disclosing the things that are flattering to their story in support of the narrative. Now, this cost one media outlet in particular a substantial undisclosed amount of money via a settlement of a lawsuit that was originally aiming to collect $275 million. Now, remember, all of this advocacy journalism was to promote that anybody wearing a MAGA hat was a bad person. So then, of course, we have the hoax, the 2019 hate crime hoax, featuring once again a MAGA hat. Again, only a few weeks separated from the Covington kids' bologna sausage. And a hoax that was so transparent to everyone, well, except for the authoritative media sources who fell for it hook, line, and sinker. In fact, it was bad. And you guessed it, that story was fake hate crime, Juicy Smollett. At the time, the story was leveraged in a way to create the maximum amount of anger. Future VP Harris had actually claimed that it was a modern-day lynching. Well, that seems a bit hyperbolic, and for somebody who should know better, again, you have to remember, she was supposedly a former DA and Attorney General. It was further disheartening to see Robin Roberts caught up in that hoax, as she never questioned the veracity, authenticity, or anything about Smollett's story in her Good Morning America interview. And to me, that was personally disappointing because I really kind of like Robin Roberts. And it didn't take long for that story to get exposed for what it was, a hate crime hoax. It also didn't take long to see how corrupt the justice system is, with Kim Foxx playing favorites to try to, well, let Smollett off with the softest possible crime. Of course, in the end, Smollett was found guilty of 5 real charges related to that hoax. Now, he's appealing it, and that's his right, but as anybody can agree, he was very guilty of doing what he's accused of. Now, I could go on for a very long time. There are many, many more examples over the last few years, anything from 2015 forward. It's ridiculous. Most of these things are well beyond the article that we're covering here, or the series of articles that I have that I used for sources of information to make this video. We have stories that are patently false, upheld to support activism, advocacy to the profound detriment of the truth and, of course, the facts. When called out for the lies, and when called the liars that they are, the media reacts by calling for an end of free speech. They solicit the technocracy to silence the people in favor of correct speech. The technocracy obliges. The circle of trust and faith gets smaller, and it all goes round and round. And we end up where we are right now. Of course, the question is, what can we do about it? Well, we have to be responsible consumers for a change. So it's on us. We have to be picky. We have to be noisy. We have to selectively pick what we watch, what we support with our attention, because our attention is valuable. And this includes using our wallets to control actions. So when you boycott media that promotes activism above facts and truth, it actually hurts and it has an effect. We have to call out the disinformation every single time. We have to call for punishments in line with what the technocrats drop every day on the ordinary citizenry, like you and I. Imagine a class action lawsuit, maybe, or something similar, I'm not sure, that would actually target platforms for the promotion of misinformation or for the utilization of authoritative sources that are consistently, chronically wrong. This might actually be something for our LawTube friends to actually go over. I'm not sure how that would work. I would imagine it could, though. And we can move to more free-thinking platforms, free speech-oriented platforms. I know that actually will do quite a lot. I suspect that those will continue to grow in the coming years because people are starting to abandon even the larger platforms. You're seeing it happen almost every day, and there's a huge following. People are walking over to Rumble or Odyssey to consume media now. And you're going to end up with TikTok being banished from the United States and other countries here in the very near future. So maybe Twitter will get Vine back up and running. But the point is, we need to be creative in pushing back, and we need to be aggressive about doing so. Honestly, this is a group effort, and we need you. But hey, what do you think? I've gone on for a very long time, and I did a lot of research. Do your own. One of the things the government is terrified of, and it was disclosed in one of the articles that I used for sourcing, that they're concerned with critical thinking. They don't like it. They don't like it when we do our own research, find our own evidence. They're terrified of it because it goes against their story. So it's on us. I'm not kidding. How do we fix it? I'm interested in your solutions. Feel free to utilize the comment section down below. I want to have a big conversation on this. This video probably isn't going to be something YouTube favors. So if you wouldn't mind, share this one out there. Go far and wide on your socials, please. This one's worth it. This was, we need to get passionate about, all of us. And with that, be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, in particular your family. Wash your hands, because it's good hygiene. That's true. And until next time, bye. And don't forget to check out my Rumble at rumble.com/CultureCasino.
Thanks for visiting today. Be sure you're subscribed and hit that for alerts.
Yay!
Of course, like and share all of the videos that you can, as it helps with the algorithm. Have a great day.